Thank you very much, Erica. Thank you for the intros. And thanks to all of you for turning out tonight. I know it's a little bit of a challenge, but I'm grateful you're here, and I'll promise I'll give you both barrels, okay? Make it worthwhile. Now, I'll start with a little story. I was in Los Angeles a while back, and I walk up to a street vendor to buy some food. Gives me the money, gives me the food, gives me the change, gives me the food. And he says, you have an accent. Where are you from? I said, well, I'm from New Zealand. He says, well, where's that? So to make it really, really simple for him, I say, look, it's down near Australia. He says, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from. That's why they vote like they do, people. So I want to... people ask me all the time, why as a New Zealander should I be touring the United States? And I've probably spoken to nearly 500 groups around your beautiful country now. And I always say the same thing. The first reason is gratitude. My country was facing invasion during World War II by the Imperial Japanese Army. And if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway, we would have been done, folks. It's a very strong memory even today. The second reason is related, but it's a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should ever fail in the United States, if you, God forbid, you ever lose your liberty, your constitution, your economic dynamism, or your military superiority, all of which took a huge trashing through the Obama years, had that trend continued, folks, we'd very soon be living in a world run out of Beijing and Havana and Moscow and Tehran. And is that the kind of world you'd like to hand on to your kids, folks? So anybody who cares about liberty has to care about the United States. There is nowhere to run to. New Zealand is my home, but this is my battleground. This is where we have to fight. Now, I want to say a couple of things about the 2016 election. The first, does anybody believe there may have been a touch of the miraculous on that election? Just a little? Okay. I think even an atheist would have to acknowledge that one. It was a miraculous event, but I don't see it as an event that saved America. It was an event that gave America a reprieve, a second chance. The country had been sliding into socialism for 100 years, was about to go off the cliff, and we got a second chance. Well, in the Old Testament, there was a lot of times when the Israelites got a second chance. But how many times did they get a third chance, folks? So we're on our second chance, and we better use it. Second thing I'll say, do you know which state in the Union contributed more to President Trump's victory than any other? Some of you know, because I get lots of answers, but it was California. Now, it pains me deeply to give credit in any form to an Australian, right? You need to understand that. It's visceral, okay? But some of you may know a man called Malcolm McGough. Okay, now Malcolm was a former Australian Army officer who ran the Trump campaign in this state. And he had 300,000 volunteers at one stage. And he had over 10,000 people on the phone banks at any given night. Now, you think about the power of that. 5 weeks before the election, he was told, stop phoning into California, put all of your guns onto Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and win them all. And he said, even Michigan? All of them. And so they trained 10,000 people every night. They did several million phone calls, and they won all of those states out of California, folks. California saved this nation. So people, I don't want to hear about any holidays in the Caribbean in the next few weeks or whatever. you have got to be involved in this. This is the most critical election of our lifetimes. And the power of the Conservatives of California can make the difference. Now, you know all about the vote harvesting that took 7 of your Republican seats last time. Well, in the latest primary, there were 5 of those seats where the Republican vote was higher than the Democrat vote. All of those are winnable back, folks. And you know President Trump needs the House back. That's about 21 seats, I believe. If you can get 5 or 6 of them out of California, that's a great start. That's a fantastic start. Doesn't have to be your local district, but get involved in phone banking or volunteering in those districts. Some of them are in Orange County, some of them in the Central Valley, some of them aren't too far from you, but you can all be involved in phone banking and sending checks to the local incumbent and the local Republican. I'm not here to sell for the Republican Party. I'm here to say we have a referendum on President Trump. We have a referendum on whether we go into socialism at the end of the year or the Trump agenda carries on. And he needs the House, and he needs an increased majority in the Senate so he doesn't have to put up with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins any longer. Okay? It's very clear what you need to do, and you have the capability of doing it. Third thing I'll say about the election, the Germans have a wonderful phrase, Schadenfreude. It means to take pleasure in the pain of others. It's not a very noble type of thing, right? But I'm sure you all watched the election right into the end of the night. And when they panned the Democratic Party headquarters about 2 a.m. or their time, and you saw those little snowflakes hugging each other and bawling their eyes out, did any of you feel a little bit of Schadenfreude? And was it good? Right, well, how much do you want to feel in 2020, people? Imagine what they're going to feel like then. So it's all there for the taking. Now, what I deal in is national security, because just like your family security or your business security, if you don't have security, you have nothing. You cannot protect what you have nothing. So I deal with the side of it that is not often discussed. And I'm sure there's a lot of military veterans in the room tonight, maybe currently serving service members. And I know you all take that famous oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, which are more dangerous, folks? Domestic by a country mile. And every day you send your brave sons and daughters overseas to fight horrible foreign enemies, and every single day they are being betrayed behind their backs by people in your own Congress and your own government. Don't you owe it to your brave sons and daughters to at least have their back when they go overseas for you? Absolutely, people. Now, in May, Donald Trump Jr. said that on Fox and Friends, and he got a bit of pushback, he said the 2020 election would be communism versus freedom. And of course they said, oh, don't you mean liberalism or progressivism? He said, no, communism. And I want to spend my time tonight proving his case, because that's exactly what we're facing. Now, there's one thing, if the Democrats win the next election, there's one thing they could do right away that would basically put all future elections out of your reach, all future national elections out of your reach. Now, Hillary Clinton promised that within 100 days of taking office, she was going to legalize every single illegal immigrant in the country and give them citizenship and voting rights. Now, according to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that is 22 million people, folks. Now, we've been told 11 million for years, but MIT says 22 million. Some people say 40 million. But let's go with 22. Now, if Hillary Clinton had won and given those people citizenship and voting rights, what proportion of them do you think would have voted Democrat? A lot, right? Let's go 80%. And I did math before Common Core, so I'm reasonably good at percentages, okay? So that would give the Democrats maybe 15 or 16 million new voters overnight. Now, considering that Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million votes, and Donald Trump won by a couple of 100,000 votes, thanks to the wisdom of your founding fathers and the Electoral College, but actually lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million, what do you think 15 or 16 million new Democrats would do to your country, folks? You would lose Texas, you would lose Florida, you would lose Arizona, Georgia and North Carolina straight off. How would you ever win another presidential election from that point? They would be able to do to the whole country what they're now trying to do to you, and there'd be nowhere to go to. So it really is that serious, folks. Now, on the internal front, how many people in the room, and I bet you it's nearly a quarter of you, have ever had to undergo an FBI background check or security check for some government or private sector job? Yeah, probably nearly a quarter of the room, right? Is it true that those background checks can be pretty darn rigorous? They go through your family background, overseas travel, criminal convictions, bounced checks, dodgy relatives. I had a friend who applied for a mid-level government job in the under Obama. The FBI sent 2 agents all the way to Canada to interview my friend's communist uncle. And on the strength of that interview, my friend, a staunch conservative, was denied that job. Not because he was a communist, because his uncle was, and it was too darn close. And people, I support that decision. I think that was the right decision to make. Because when you're in the federal government, you have the fate of the free world in your hands. One traitor could cost you a battle. One traitor could cost you a war. You know, the atom bomb spies who gave the atom bomb secrets to the Soviet Union could have destroyed your country if things had gone the wrong way. You've got to be able to trust people in the federal government. You've got to at least be able to vet them. You know, we talk about vetting refugees from overseas. Well, what about the people who serve in our own government? California still has a law on the books that you cannot be a communist and serve in the California state government. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't apply to the legislative branch because half of them would have to stand down. But anyway, so, you know, many of you have got those tests. Well, say if you're a young radical who hangs around with the local communists like Ro Khanna or Zoe Lofgren or Anna Eshoo, who goes to Cuba on a regular basis, and you get elected to Congress where you may serve on the Homeland Security Committee or the Armed Services Committee or even the Intelligence Committee, how much of an FBI background check do you need for that one, folks? Zero. Nothing. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? Well, how's that been working out? Can you see the problem if the media is not on your side? I don't think your founding fathers really realised what the media would turn into. So, you know, so these people get no background checks and no media vetting. Do you think maybe the Iranians know about this? Do you think maybe the Russians and the Chinese know about this? If you were the leadership of China and you hated President Trump and what he was doing, would you risk a multi-billion-dollar trade war with America or a multi-trillion-dollar shooting war that you might lose, or would you spend a few $1 million with the local communists buying up American politicians? What would you do? What do you think the Iranians are doing right now? The Iranians elected 3 Democrats in Orange County last year. A whole bunch of your senators are on the take from the Iranians. That's how you got an Iran nuclear deal, people, because they're on the take and taking Iranian money. But they don't have to worry because the media won't investigate them. There's no background checks, but we have one fallback. We have the Federal Bureau of Investigation, right? That's there to prevent traitors and spies and terrorists from selling out this country, right? We can always rely on the FBI, right? We saw how tough they were on Hillary Clinton. They didn't give her any mercy, did they? They put national security before their jobs and pensions, right? Am I being a little facetious here? But it illustrates the point, doesn't it? See, the FBI is answerable, well, it is overseen by the Judiciary Committee, the most powerful committee in your Congress. They also oversee the Justice Department. What is supposed to happen is the FBI is supposed to catch the traitors and the Justice Department is meant to prosecute them. But how's that been working out recently? When your own organs of national security are weaponized against you, you have a problem, folks. So there's no background checks, there's no media scrutiny. Now the FBI, the Judiciary Committee, who remembers a congressman called John Conyers from Michigan, right? He was in Congress 140, 160 years apparently, roughly. Just bowed out a few years ago, he died since. Now I was saying this while he was alive, folks. He was one of the most treasonous congressmen ever to serve in your Congress. And he was the head of the Judiciary Committee for about 40 years. He oversaw the FBI and the Justice Department. John Conyers had a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA, 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America, which is worse than the Communist Party USA. He also supported the Workers' World Party, which supports North Korea and Cuba and Iran, and was actively involved in several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. And if you're not sure what the Muslim Brotherhood is, it's a secret society that came out of Egypt in the 1940s with the goal of establishing Islam, the caliphate, worldwide. It is the father of Hamas and Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But in America, it works legally through the Council on American Islamic Relations, Muslim Student Association, and many similar groups. And when some of your congressmen, Republicans, tried to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist organization, you can see John Conyers in this movie right up there saying, oh, no, we shouldn't do that. No. They are a good agency now. They have given up violence. They're a peaceful social service agency, and we should work with them, not against them. John Conyers was a hardcore anti-American Marxist Leninist. As hardcore as you can get, people, yet for 40 years he oversaw the FBI. Also on that committee till recently was a man called Luis Gutierrez from Illinois, Mr. Amnesty Man, who was a former member of the pro-Cuban Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a Communist Party supporter, and a Muslim Brotherhood Front supporter. On that committee now is a woman called Judy Chu from California, a long-time supporter of the Communist Workers' Party, a pro-Chinese communist group, described as China's best friend in your Congress and the Chinese press. And you should see Judy Chu attack the FBI whenever they have the temerity to arrest one of the more than 25,000 Chinese spies currently working in this country. You are racist, she says. You are a racist anti-Asian organization. You're only persecuting these people because you hate Chinese. And she has arranged for sensitivity training for these cruel FBI agents so they don't persecute these poor Chinese spies any longer. But who replaced John Conyers, eh? Well, you know, Sean Hannity's been getting really upset because you've got a socialist in Congress now, Ocasio-Cortez. She's a member of Democratic Socialists of America. How could this happen? How could we have a socialist in Congress? Well, Jerry Nadler, the man who now heads the Judiciary Committee, the man who tried to impeach your president, has been a member of Democratic Socialists of America since at least 1977, folks. He is a Marxist, a full-blown Marxist running the Judiciary Committee, overseeing the FBI and the Justice Department. So the FBI, which hasn't investigated congressmen since at least before World War II, comes to the Judiciary Committee and says, look, we have evidence that some of your members are taking money from the Iranians, working with the Cubans, the North Koreans. In the interest of national security, Mr. Nadler, we need to investigate congressmen. Can we have some money? And by the way, Mrs. Chu and Mr. Nadler, you're on the list. Is that all right? How do you think that's going to go, ladies and gentlemen? So there's no background checks, there's no media scrutiny, and if you're in Congress, the FBI doesn't dare to touch you. You're home free. Give you another example. Andre Carson from Indiana, one of your 3 Muslim members of Congress. Again, right here, saying this. He's at a Muslim Brotherhood Front Group conference in Connecticut in 2012. He gets up in front of the crowd and he says, hey people, I've been told there's some spies here today. People undercover in the audience watching us because they believe we are here plotting to destroy this country. Well, I say to you people undercover, Allah will not allow you to stop us. This man serves on the Intelligence Committee, people, overseeing the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, all 16 of your intelligence agencies. You have got at least 100 members of the US House who couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus. They head every major committee: Homeland Security, Intelligence, it's Adam Schiff, in case you didn't know, who works with the Chinese very extensively. That's armed services, that's education, that's natural resources. All of them are headed by Marxists, every single one. And the same situation applies in the US Senate. About 25 US senators, including both from California, could not pass a background check. Not even close. You know, Kamala's got a huge Marxist background. Her parents were Marxists. She's worked with them all her life. She's a protege of Steve Phillips from the Bay Area, who married into the Sandler family. He was a Marxist Leninist at Stanford, got a whole bunch of money, and he is behind Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Deval Patrick, Andrew Gillum, Stacey Abrams, and Barack Obama. Gave us all of those candidates. And obviously, Dianne Feinstein, you know, when they said they found she had a Chinese spy in her office? Look, she was bringing Russian students to Stanford University in the 50s. She was working with the communists all the way through. They didn't need a Chinese spy in her office, people, unless it was just to help her a little bit. And he wasn't just her driver, as they said. He was her office manager for 15 years. How many secrets do you think he fed to China? You know, she's on the Intelligence Committee, people, of the Senate, and she's still there. So what about the presidential candidates? Well, again, my new book, it's just out this week, White House Reds. Well, what does that title tell you? Communist, Socialist and Security Risks Standing for US President 2020. Now, most of them have dropped out so far, but they're still senators, they're still important people, are still involved in the campaign, and they will be cabinet ministers, cabinet officials if one of these candidates wins. But what I say is, of the 23 major Democrats who ran, 13 were Marxists. Of the 10 who are still active at the beginning of this year, Booker comes from a Marxist background. Buttigieg's father was a major communist, and he has worked with Marxists his entire career. Amy Klobuchar is a complete and utter socialist, as bad as Bernie. Julian Castro is San Antonio communist royalty. Who else is there? Deval Patrick is basically a socialist from Massachusetts. Tom Steyer. 5 of these people went to Stanford, people. You know, Booker, Steyer, Kamala Harris's sister, a whole bunch of them went to Stanford. That's where I believe the Chinese and the Russians recruit a lot of people. Just like they recruited out of Cambridge in the 30s, they were recruited out of Stanford in recent years. The Chinese consulates nearby, the Soviet embassies there, perfect. And they get a lot of people out of there. But anyway, so what I'm saying in this, they are all Marxists. The only one who's not is Bloomberg, who has a whole heap of his own problems, right? He is not fit to be a dog catcher, you know, but he's not a Marxist. But all the rest are. Now you say, oh, not Joe Biden, surely. He's the moderate Democrat, right? Okay. Well, who's ever heard of a man called Armand Hammer? Okay, the leading Soviet agent of the early 20th century. The man who kept the revolution alive, made millions of dollars trading with Lenin, a good friend of Lenin, lived in the Soviet Union, son of a Communist Party member, founder of Occidental Petroleum. Very, very rich man, the leading Soviet agent of the time. Well, he had a protege, a man he paid a lot of money to do no work, a bit like Hunter Biden in the Ukraine. Lots and lots of money. His name was Albert Gore Sr. You may have heard of his son. Invented the internet and global warming, right? Okay. Well, Albert Gore Sr. was the leader for a time of a group called the Council for a Livable World. That was set up in Washington, D.C. in 1962 with the express purpose of electing senators in small states, because you could elect them for not too much money, who would then work to gut the US military right through their careers, to vote against weapon systems, negotiate bad treaties with the Soviet Union, oppose anti-communists, basically to bring the American military to its knees and wipe out your nuclear advantage. That was their job. The founder of that group was a man called Leo Szilard. He was a Hungarian communist who became a Manhattan Project scientist, a massive security risk. They had heaps of communists working on the bomb. And after he got out of that, he went into the peace movement, the anti-nuclear movement. Now, according to Pavel Sudoplatov, a former high-ranking Russian intelligence officer, Leo Szilard and Oppenheimer and his friends were all Soviet agents, fully recruited Soviet agents. And after the Russians got the bomb, their job was to build pressure in the United States to disarm America. So he set up the Council for a Livable World. And they have funded over 200 senators and over 200 congressmen who have done nothing but betray you ever since. And guess who their greatest success, the two greatest successes that they claim? Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Joe Biden was in 1972, was a 29-year-old city councillor standing for the US Senate against a 4-term Republican incumbent with an 80% approval rating. And he beat him because he got $280,000 and a whole bunch of support from the Council for a Livable World, organised through Albert Gore Sr. They picked him up, they came and saw him, they recruited him, and he says, again in the movie, got him on tape saying, I was there, the Council for a Livable World got me elected, and I've been obligated to them ever since. And they have worked with me when I was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and they're still helping me today. They just helped me and Obama negotiate the START treaty with Russia, which President Trump had to cancel because it was so advantageous to Moscow. Joe Biden has done more to betray your country than virtually any other senator you have ever seen. And he is the moderate people. All of them are Marxists. Bernie Sanders is completely the creation of Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA. Democratic Socialists of America, their leaders are trained by a group out of New York, Manhattan, called the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, which is the local affiliate of the Berlin-based Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. That is are a taxpayer subsidised, German taxpayer subsidised, fully owned subsidiary of the German Die Linke party, the fifth biggest party in their parliament. Die Linke means the left. It used to be called the East German Communist Party. They are training Bernie's troops. Bernie's movement is working with Norwegian communists, French communists, Italian communists, Brazilian communists, Portuguese communists, and Italian communists right now. This whole apparatus is run by Democratic Socialists of America, which is more left-wing than the Communist Party, and the Communist Party helps out a bit, and so do the Maoists from Liberation Road, the people who gave you Black Lives Matter, which is why one of their leaders is now one of Bernie's chief advisors. Bernie is a complete and utter communist, folks, 100%. Biden is a complete and utter traitor. Buttigieg is a Marxist. Amy Klobuchar is a Marxist, so are all of the rest of them, all of them. And they're still there in your US Senate, and they will be in the President's cabinet. You know, why did Buttigieg and Klobuchar pull out? I guarantee, because if Biden said, you endorse me, guys, pull out, endorse me, you'll be Secretary of Transport, you'll be Secretary of Health and Human Services, blah, blah, blah. That's how they would do it. So these people, you still got to read the book, folks, because most Americans know Bernie's a bit radical, but they don't know all of the leading Democrat contenders are communists. All of them, except Bloomberg. And he's as bad, right? So, you know, he thinks the Communist Party of China's all right. They listen to their people, right? And he wants to take your guns. Well, how long are you going to last without your guns, folks? How long do you keep your First Amendment when you don't have a second? So this is why I'm making the case. This really is communism versus freedom. Because these people, if they get elected again, they will legalise every single illegal immigrant in the country straight away. They will ramp up refugee resettlement from the Middle East and put them on all the conservative parts of your country to weaken your base. And how do you fight back? What do you do from there? And if you think they're going to make you like France or Germany, I wish. But these people are the people who marched in support of the Viet Cong. They marched in support of the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. They love Fidel Castro. Bernie Sanders talks about Sweden and Germany, but he doesn't talk to the German Social Democrats. He talks only to the German communists and the Swedish communists, folks. It's not probably true, so it is documentally, it's in here. So that's where we're at. We're in a position, one bad election could be pretty darn awful. Now, but if I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans, okay? Now, I think there's lots of hope here, folks. You know, especially since Trump was elected, there's been a new spirit in this land. And we're not out of the woods. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but at least we have hope now. And how would we be feeling today if Hillary Clinton was president right now? Would you even be holding a meeting like this? I don't think so. So, why do they hate Trump so much? Has anybody seen as much hatred and vitriol directed at a sitting president as this one? Well, there's two reasons. The first, the Democrats so believed their own propaganda on election night, they were so certain of victory, they were like a bunch of kids who thought they were going to get the biggest bike you've ever seen for Christmas, and they got a pair of socks, right? We all know that feeling, don't we? Usually you move on after a year or so, don't you? You get over it. Well, are doubling down, because this is the real reason. See, the Democrats, it's all identity politics. They win through misery and division. When the blacks are poor, they vote Democrat. When people are divided, they vote Democrat. When people are struggling, they vote Democrat. They just want to get some crumbs. You know, when people are at each other's throat, the Democrats are there to stir up hatred and division. They do not prosper when we prosper. They do not want President Trump to make this a prosperous country, folks. They absolutely know that if they do that, they are done. See, when President, you know, like They rely on the fact that 90% of blacks vote Democrat. That's a big deal to them. So when President Trump goes to the black communities and says, guys, so this is what voting Democrats done to your cities: crime, fatherlessness, drugs, joblessness, just a disaster. Well, why don't you vote for me? What do you got to lose? And a whole bunch of them said, heck yeah. Trump won Michigan because instead of 96% of blacks voting Democrat, only 92% did. He has got a 29% approval rating now amongst black males. You haven't had that since Abraham Lincoln, folks. You think maybe this is freaking the Democrats out a little bit? And they've gone so extreme. You know, all those white union guys out in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, the ones who used to work in the steel mills and the car plants and had great union jobs and benefits. Well, he went out and saw those guys and said, so why do they call this a Rust Belt? Where's all your big union-paying jobs? You know, is this what voting Democrat and NAFTA has done for you? Well, he knows you cannot defend your country without an industrial base. You've got to have that. So he said, we are going to bring the jobs, the manufacturing back to the Midwest. Are you with me? And for the first time in their lives, those white union guys went down to the polling booth and they ticked the box for a Republican. People, we're going to do well in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Minnesota, Michigan. We're going to do well there. It's more the southern states I worry about because that's where the minorities are. And I can guarantee you that Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders is going to put a black female on his VP ticket for that very reason. Stacey Abrams, maybe Kamala, but I think she's damaged goods. But they'll find someone like that because they got to drag the black majorities out. Because the blacks lean Democrat, but they don't vote in very high numbers. And that's what they got to do. So, and you know, Latinos, in Texas, 45% of Latinos support Trump. They're not all about amnesty and no borders. They came here legally, they paid their dues. They don't like getting tarred with the illegal immigrant brush. So, you know, the Republican thing has been go soft on the Latinos, talk about amnesty and they'll love us. No, they don't. They love people who stand up for the country they have moved into to live in and be part of. That's who they love. You know, that's who they want to see. So the Democrats understand that if Trump gets the border wall built and he keeps the taxes coming down and, the regulations coming off, the American worker is going to be on the pig's back. Because what's it going to be like when you're sitting out in Ohio with trillions of dollars coming into your economy? Because President Trump wins again, folks, you'll see the checkbooks open like you've never seen. They came open when he won. Right now they're a little bit, do I not? Am I going to put $1 billion into this factory in Minnesota or am I not? When he wins, they will write the checks out. You'll see a huge competition for American labour. There'll be no illegal immigrant labour coming across the border, and American wages are going to go through the roof, people. Through the roof. So 4 years of that, energy independence. That's huge. That's fantastic. The regulations coming down. All of these things to get the economy right and to restore the faith in this country are all possible now, and many of them are already happening. So what are the Democrats going to have to offer after 4 more years of Donald Trump? What are they going to? They haven't got anything to offer now. What's it going to be like with 4 more years of this? They're going to be decimated. They'll probably split. The Bernie people will throw their toys out of the cot and go home. All sorts of things. If they lose, they're going to be in major grief, maybe for 10 or 20 years, folks. We could be setting up. You imagine had Ronald Reagan never stood in 1980 and we had 2 terms of Jimmy Carter. Imagine what this country would be like today. But we got Reagan and he set it up. He set the seeds of an economic boom that we're still feeling now. Well, that's what Trump is doing now, only way bigger. You want to get on top of your debt, build your economy, keep your military strong, so your creditors come to terms, your enemies back off, and your friends stay on your side. That's what you got to do. Be strong, and you will have allies, friends, and friendly creditors. Weaken your military, your creditors come calling, your enemies come after you, and your friends back away. That's what we're facing. And that's what the next Democrat would do to this country. Probably finish it off. So, one of the great things that President Trump's done, because, you know, we all know there's a lot of things that need to be done. One of my what we've got to do when we win, we've got to start a campaign to abolish the Department of Education in this country, right? Yeah. So you can take control of your education at a state level, so you can teach your kids your own values, not Washington socialist values. Because if we don't do that, we will lose eventually, folks. We're losing our kids now. There's a whole bunch of other things we can do. You know, Trump has pulled America out of 2 or 3 United Nations bodies right now. You know, UNESCO, one of the UNESCO things, and another, UN Human Rights, whatever it is, headed by some tin pot dictatorship. Well, we need to start a campaign in the next election. Let's get right out of it altogether. Let's abolish it. Why pay for something that hates you and spends most of its time trying to undermine you? Why fund that? How logical is that? So there's all sorts of things we can do when Trump gets re-elected. But this is what I think is probably one of the most important. Now, we all hear these examples. You know, some little twit in the Ninth Circuit says, Mr. Trump, you can't do that, right? I'm going to be ruling American policy, and I say what you're proposing is unconstitutional. I have no foundation for it, but I'm going to stop you. Well, President Trump has put more conservative and constitutionalist judges into the circuits of this country than any other by a country mile. Even the Ninth Circuit is now running even, right? Conservative, liberal. That is going to have massive impact on this country for your gun rights, your religious liberties, all of these things in future years. The seeds are being set now. But if we don't keep it on, the next Democrats are just going to pack the Supreme Court with another 5 or 6 commies, and it'll all go back. So we're hanging on the cusp. We're hanging on the cusp of greatness. We're on the cusp of disaster, or a positive cycle that may go on for decades. It's a real either or. Now, the Supreme Court. For 60 years, the Supreme Court has been run by the hard left. And I don't call them liberal judges. They are usually socialists and Marxists, most of them. Breyer had one of the communists from Stanford that used to work with Steve Phillips as his main assistant a few years ago. They are hard left, and for 60 years they make this bad unconstitutional decision. They call that precedent. Then they pile another bad decision on top of that, and another one on top of that. So probably 70% of what your federal government now does is completely unconstitutional. And you're not allowed to challenge precedent, right? Well, now they are. They're starting to roll back precedents. Now, you imagine what could come. Now, think of this. 4 more years of Trump. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is getting pretty old, folks. Her health is not great. And you know what? She has publicly said she would love to go and retire in New Zealand. Okay? How's that? Well, people, I'm willing to take one for the team. Okay? I'll do it. I'll suck it up. She can go down there and play bingo all day long, and you will have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, folks. Imagine what that could do for all the things you've been fighting for years. Roe v. Wade, your religious liberties, your gun rights. Most of your gun rights in this state are completely unconstitutional. You get a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, people. How long are those laws going to stand? All of the things you're fighting for, all of the things that you're frustrated about, it's all within our grasp to change it. Am I getting a little bit carried away, folks? A little bit, maybe? It's all there for the taking, people. Right now, we just gotta win. We gotta win. So, I know what you people do. Many of you are involved in Republican politics. You're writing out checks all the time. You're door knocking. You're phone banking. You're driving all over the county, all over the state, going to conferences year after year after year with very little thanks. All because you love your children and you love your country for no other reason. And you do it year after year. I know what you do, people. Well, I'm asking you to double down. This is the year. This is the year you write out the bigger check. This is the year you volunteer for more phone banking, for more door knocking. You get more involved. Because what you do this year will decide your children's future more than any other year of your lives. Any other year. People, it's so critical. And you are in a position to have huge influence. You win back 6 congressional seats in this state, folks. That might be what gets President Trump the House. It could very well be. 1 seat in California might make the difference between Trump being able to do what he wants to do and being stymied by the House for 4 years or 2 years. Think about how frustrating that would be. So, because you imagine President Trump probably doesn't like the left very much right now, right? Feels a little bit frustrated. So he gets the House. He gets the Senate with an increased majority. So as I said, he doesn't have to put up with Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And he's got the White House. And he's got 6 judges in the Supreme Court. He would be unleashed, people. He would set them back for decades. And it's all there for the taking, and a bit of hard work and a bit of faith and a bit of just doubling down. It's there for our taking. So what I'm saying to you folks, we stand on the brink. We blow this God-given opportunity and we have only ourselves to blame. But if we win the next election, we will spark an economic boom like we've never seen. We will spark liberty revolutions, not just here, but all around the planet, in Iran, in Brazil, Australia, South Africa, France, Germany. Don't you think they want to be free too, folks? Run their own country? And we win here, they will start to win there. We lose here, it goes out for all of us, folks. And it's pretty miserable. So what I'm saying is this. If we give it everything that we have, everything that's within us over the next few months, for our God, our Constitution, our families, and our President, if we give it everything we can possibly muster for those things, make every sacrifice we can, 2 things may happen. 1, we may do all of that and maybe we still lose. But at least we all earn the right to look our children in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could for you. What's that worth to you, folks? And if we win, and we absolutely can win this, because that 2016 election convinced me that God is not finished with this country yet, folks. We win this, we'll spark an economic boom like you've never seen. You'll spark a liberty boom that'll spread all over the world. And this is what motivates me, folks. We will all earn the right to pass on to our children not just the amazing country that we inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for, folks? Thank you. Thank you. So I want to say to you people, thank you so much for what you do for America, for liberty, and my country. God bless America, and God bless California, and God bless all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you so
I have
much,
one, and
folks.
this is a true story, because I know who wrote the question. So the question states, thanks, Bill. 40 years ago, I got excellent emergency medical care in New Zealand, although at the time very unenthusiastic of nationalized health care in the U.S. Based on my experience, I thought that for a small country like New Zealand might be a good environment for such a program. Now, I know you've been gone for a while, but is the national health care in New Zealand still working well?
Look, it never has. And I'll tell you this. Look, yes, if you break your arm, they'll fix you up, put you on your way, and you'll be fine. You'll be great. But if you have a chronic illness or a long-term illness, you're in big trouble. Now, a few years ago, they doubled the health budget in our country over 6 years with no measurable outcome. There was too long a waiting list, so they said, right, we've got a new law. Nobody can be on a waiting list for more than 6 months. Okay, well, that's great, but at the end of 6 months, you don't get your operation, you send back to your doctor, who may put you back on the list, or they may not. Look, give you an example. You know, see, in a free market healthcare system, and I know it's not free market here, but at least you still have elements of it, you are a customer, and your doctor makes a lot of money and gets a lot of holidays if they make you well and productive and want to come back and see them again. Well, when you're in a socialised healthcare system, health needs are unlimited, but the budget is always fixed, right? Might be X trillion dollars, but it's fixed. So all decisions are made by accountants. Now, you imagine Christchurch Public Hospital, where I come from, you've got we've got a $20 million a year budget for oncology, for treating cancer patients. You've got a 7-year-old girl in this bed who needs a $200,000 bout of chemotherapy to fix her leukemia. You've got a 75-year-old guy in this bed who needs the same amount of money to fix his prostate cancer. So it's the end of the financial year. You're running out of money. The accountant has said if there are any overruns, they come out of next year's budget. You've got to make a decision. 7-year-old girl, 75-year-old guy. What am I going to do? 7-year-old girl's going to grow up, marry, pay taxes, be productive. The 75-year-old guy is going to be a drain on the system for the rest of his life. What are you going to do, folks? This is how it works. You can only ration. That's the only way it can work, because needs are unlimited. Why shouldn't I have a breast implant? Why shouldn't I have a transgender operation? Why shouldn't I get my acne fixed, on the state? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I get my ingrown toenail fixed and have them pay for it? So my 85-year-old dad goes to the doctor. He plays ping pong, goes hunting, fishing, paid taxes all his life, worked all his life, but he's got shoulder ligament problems, which is interfering with his ping pong. Goes to the doctor and says, can I have an operation? The doctor says, are you crazy? They're not going to operate on you when you're 85. Here's some painkillers. People, break your leg while you're skiing in New Zealand. They'll look after you great. You get cancer when you're 68, forget it. That's how socialised healthcare works. You want to know socialised healthcare, how it works? Go to the Indian reservations and the VA. If you want Indian reservation medicine all over America, be my guest.
Okay, so bouncing around a little bit, that was a little question on healthcare. This is something that I think a lot of people might be thinking. The writer says, I'm worried that Biden will win and that he'll be a puppet with someone else pulling the strings.
Look, absolutely. Look, Biden can hardly tie up his shoelaces. We know that. He's the real Bernie, the weekend at Bernie, right? He is the walking corpse who will wave his hand and they'll tape record a speech behind his head. Maybe if he got elected, the vice president, whether it's Stacey Abrams, who's an Obama puppet, Obama will be running the White House again. Simple as that. He will be a puppet. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. So this is probably in reference to that litany of people you said as a commie, as a commie, as a commie. The question, who's not a commie, I assume it's in the Democrat Party.
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
commie.
Look, as I said, out of the 23 that ran, 13 were identifiable Marxists. Of all of them that ran after the beginning of the year, including Tulsi Gabbard, I have to say, and a lot of conservatives like Tulsi, because she's anti-war and all this kind of thing. She was elected through Democratic Socialists of America. They supported it all the way through. And what Hillary Clinton said about her being a Russian asset is perfectly true. She has been working in the interests of the Russians and the North Koreans and the Venezuelans and the Iranians her entire career. But Tucker Carlson has her on and loves her all the time because she is very smooth. She's speaks the right thing. I don't think she realises what she is, but she was taken to Syria by Denis Kucinich, who has worked with the Communist Party USA since the 1960s. Her visit was sponsored by a Syrian National Socialist Party, Syrian Nazis basically, who work with the Russians. And she gets up saying, no, we shouldn't be hard on the Iranians, we shouldn't be hard on the North Koreans, we shouldn't be hard on the Venezuelans, we shouldn't be hard on any of those people. Well, you can argue foreign policy all you like, but every one of those countries wants to destroy this country and are working hard to do it. Venezuela is sending tons of drugs to your country right now. So is China. Fentanyl killed 60,000 Americans last year. Where does that come from? It comes from China. But of course the Chinese government doesn't know about it, does it? You know, so she is a friend of all our enemies. That's Tulsi. All of them could not pass any form of background check. None of them. I'm sorry some people might like Tulsi, but read the book and I think you'll see what I'm talking about.
And this is a great follow-up question. Just very briefly, this is, I think, an excellent question. Could you just talk a little bit about your research? How do you know these people are Marxists?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question because I'm just up here spouting, right? You'll see the extensive footnotes in the back of the book. So I do a lot of my research online, that's one thing. But see, I've studied the left for 30 years, so I know where to look and go into their websites, go into their, you know, into their back end. And I've got a database of, it's got 127,000 communists on it. It's called KeyWiki. It's publicly available, Keywiki. Got all the presidential backgrounds on it, all your senators, your congressmen, 127,000 files, blue linked. So you find, why has Biden had 5 Marxists on his staff? Why has Dianne Feinstein been working with the Russians her entire career? But the other way I get my research, and I've done a lot of this at Stanford, the communists are atheists, right? So their only posterity are the papers they leave behind them. And what they do, at the end of their life, they gather all their papers up, their membership lists, their letterheads, their letters, whatever, and they put them in boxes and donate them to a local library. Because they think in 100 years' time, somebody's going to come along and write a wonderful biography of their revolutionary life. Well, I go and look at them too. And I take thousands of photographs and I cross-match them. Like, for instance, and down in SoCal, not far from here, there was a man called Hugh DeLacy living for some time, right? Now, Hugh DeLacy was a member of Congress out of Washington State from 46 to 48, and he was a secret Communist Party member. That has been established. That's not me saying that. A secret communist. He came to SoCal, and he struck up a friendship with one of your congressmen. And I went through his papers, and I found a whole bunch of letters between the congressman and Hugh DeLacy. And the congressman was sending him military information. And this is just some twerp living in SoCal. There's some retired guy sending him military handbooks and stuff. And so I look at this, and then I look at the rest of his letters, and he was corresponding with 5 Soviet agents at the time. 2 of them living in China, 1 in Chicago, 1 in Washington State, and 1 somewhere else. 5 of them, 5 identified Soviet agents. Well, that congressman was a man called Leon Panetta, who became Secretary of Defense and head of the CIA, folks, under Obama. That's how I find out my stuff. I get their papers out. I went to the Vivian G. Harsh Library in South Chicago, got off the bus, and I was freaked out because I was the only white person in about 2 miles. Nobody hurt me. It was all great. It was fine. Everybody was friendly, but it's a little bit intimidating. But I went to the library, and I spent a couple of days there through the Alice Palmer papers. Alice Palmer was the woman who got Obama's first job in politics. All of her trips to Grenada to meet Morris Bishop, all of her trips to the Soviet Union, letters with Obama's signature on it to communists saying, meet you at the next meeting. All this, it's all there. But no journalists look at it. So you look at the referencing in the back of my book, and if I've got anything wrong, you tell me. But I don't get challenged on points of fact. I don't come to America as a foreigner and tell you most of your leaders are commies without a little bit of proof. I'd get laughed out pretty fast, would I not? And I've been doing this for 10 years now. No one sued me. Nobody's called me out in a point of fact. And they all avoid me like the plague. So that's what I say to that.
That's a good answer. Jumping back to the election at hand, what are your thoughts of why hasn't Obama endorsed Biden?
Because he thinks he's an idiot. You know, look, he only picked him to balance the ticket, you know. He knew he was an idiot then. And the Russians are probably quite keen on it because they were friends for a long time. Look, I think Obama originally wanted Kamala Harris. He was behind, his people were behind her. But then she flamed out, and that was a big surprise to me. I thought she was going to be the candidate. Then he got Deval Patrick to jump in, and Deval got up to, I think, 0.5% before he flamed out. So really they got no one left. You might tell Michelle, you got to jump in next. I don't know. But Bernie is too obviously crazy. Bernie would do what happened with Jeremy Corbyn in England, get thrashed, and it would smash their down ticket. What they're looking at Joe Biden is he'll hold he'll reduce the damage down ticket. We might be able to get him elected, and he will be a puppet for whatever we want him to do, and we'll run it through the vice president. That's the only logic I can see to it. And he hasn't endorsed him yet because he's been hanging off and hanging off and hanging off. But I think he will save it for a little bit down the track. See where when Bernie flames out, which I think he might be the end of his road tonight, actually, if he doesn't do well in Michigan, which I don't think he will. I think Obama will come out and endorse Biden, unless there's some surprise that we don't know about, you know, somewhere. But I at this late stage, I don't think so. So one more question?
Yeah, maybe a couple more. How do you explain to young people that Biden and Sanders are not pushing for, in paren, Denmark, German, Sweden-style socialism? You know, the good kind.
Yeah, well, that's tricky because they always talk about it, and we're social democrats, and we just want the country be a bit more fair like Europe. And people look at Sweden and Germany, it looks quite nice, until you go there and see the absolute clampdown on gun rights and freedom of speech and the massive political correctness. But if you look at an animal in a zoo, they look quite happy from a distance, don't they? Mm-hmm. You can't see inside their soul. So, but the first thing I say to these young people, look, Bernie is a communist, he is a totalitarian. Why are his people working with the same people who built the Berlin Wall and used to shoot people trying to get across it? Why has Biden worked in the favour of China and the Soviet Union, Moscow, his entire political career? Do you really want to trust your future to people like that? You know, would you buy a used car off either of them? But, you know, most young people, because we've allowed them to be brainwashed in the schools for so long, they think socialism is all the freedom we have now and all the prosperity we have now, plus lots of free stuff. That's what they think it is. And we've got to make them understand that if a government's big enough to give you everything that you want, it's also big enough to take away everything that you've got. And you are, look, put it this way, if your health care depends totally on the government and your 7-year-old daughter has leukemia, are you going to write that letter to the editor criticising your local mayor or the local You know, are you going to criticize your local congressman? Are you going to lead a rally against Washington when your daughter is dying of leukemia and the only treatment you can give her is through the government? Are you going to do that? When the government controls your healthcare, they control your life. That's what you're doing. You're giving your life over and all decisions you ever want to make over to a government in Washington that has a history of treating people like crap. And you want to do that. They, you know, it just beggars the imagination.
Okay, we'll do one more, but first that, this just in, our reporters out there tell us that Biden wins Michigan 54-38, so not that close either. So there'll be a proportional distribution of delegates, but still,
Yeah,
that
that'll
was
save him a little bit. Might keep him going a week.
Right. Well, I want all of you to get a chance to speak with Trevor, so he'll be dropping down in a second. But we generally end every meeting with a futuristic type question. So if we're all agreed, I think Trump 2020. Who's your thoughts for 2024?
Wow, yeah. Look, I'd love to see Donald Trump Jr. 2032. You know, I don't like dynasties, but I think he's probably smarter than his dad in a lot of ways. He's a very smart guy. Look, I don't really want to see Haley. I'm looking at someone more like Tom Cotton, or, you know, it's a possibility, or even Ron DeSantis out of Florida. He's very good. He's a little bit lacking in the charisma department, but he's a great governor. Other than that, I don't know, you know. I wish I did. Sorry? Who, sorry?
Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley was the...
Oh, from Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, he's an up-and-comer for the future. Yeah, yes, a good Stanford man. Yeah, Josh Hawley is great. I really admire him. And in 2040, I'd be looking at Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens.
Both former Forum alumni, I'd like to mention. So, yeah, you heard them here first.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Trevor. Ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Loudon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you.
All right.